We'll call the meeting to order at 6:02. All board members are present. And we'll welcome our guests from the Canterbury Select Board here in just a moment, so hold that thought. First up, we'll do review and approval of the October 10th public meeting minutes.
I have one change.
Okay.
Line 58 for the Withdrawal Study Committee, it says the vote was 5-2 in favor of moving forward with the town of Canterbury withdrawing. The vote was 5-2 in favor of recommending moving forward.
So what are you proposing?
Recommending.
Just adding the word recommending
Yep.
to in favor of recommending moving forward?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Anything else?
Make a motion to accept the minutes with the new corrections.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Date and location of the next meeting, it's November 2nd at Belmont Elementary School. That is a change from when we were planning to meet on Halloween, and we moved it. So,
November 2nd, is that a budget specific?
Yeah, it's a budget work session with the
Yes.
administrators.
yes, budget work.
It's not like a regular other agenda.
Correct.
The November 14th meeting though is the one that we're asking to reschedule as well.
Right, because that is planning
For tomorrow.
Planning for tomorrow, I was gonna say planning for the future, but I knew that. Planning for tomorrow,
Public hearing.
public hearing, but there's a family
Yes.
session. So do we need to do that?
I don't know if we do that now or later.
Thoughts? Or do you wanna wait until November 2nd?
I don't mind waiting until November 2nd, unless it's more beneficial for someone to.
Thoughts?
I have no preference.
I'd rather wait.
Okay, we'll wait. Since no one has a preference, unless you do, Jude.
No,
Okay. All right. First up is public communication and correspondence. Anyone from the public wish to make a statement, address the board? Okay, seeing none, welcome for Canterbury Town Officials. We're pleased to have you here tonight. I don't know if we want to do introductions.
I'm Ken Roswick.
Scott Doherty.
I'm Ken Folsom, I'm the town administrator.
Great.
We're selectmen.
Yeah, thank you.
Sean, go ahead.
I'm Kate McDonald. I'm the BHS student representative on the school board.
And Kate,
Sean
where are you-
Embry, Shaker
Hold
Regional
on,
School
where
Board.
are you
I
from,
live in
Kate?
Belmont.
I live in Canterbury.
Okay, sorry, Sean, I interrupted you.
Sean Embry, Shaker Regional School Board from Belmont.
Jill Smith from Belmont. Alice Todd from Canterbury.
Mark Eckberg, Belmont.
Randy Johnson, Canterbury.
Michelle Lewis, Canterbury.
Jeff Roberts, Belmont.
Michael Tercey, Superintendent.
Debbie Thompson, Business Administrator.
And Gretel Sawalder, school board secretary.
Well, we appreciate you coming. We always find these very informative, so hopefully you find it as well. So I don't know how we want to open up. I don't know if you have specific questions for us. We may have specific questions for you.
In the past, we've talked about the upcoming year, budgets and things like that, any big plans. One thing that the town, in March, we're looking at expending some money on some fairly substantial warrant articles. One is a backhoe. Our current backhoe for the town broke down and is not repairable. We're looking at a lease-to-own warrant article for $175,000. And on top of that, our grader, road grader is we thought we were couldn't get it repaired. We did finally get it repaired, but we're looking at a new one, and that's around $400,000. So we have a couple of big ticket items. We passed the warrant article last year for a fire truck. We applied for a grant. We haven't gotten the grant yet. The grant period is still open. If it doesn't come through, the town's gonna be on the hook for
450-ish.
450 or so.
470-ish, somewhere in there.
So those are some big ticket items that we're looking at in the next year for budget-wise. And typically, we ask what the school has in plans for the next, any big warrant article, any budget items like that.
So I know we're just digging into the budget the first time tonight, so it's very exciting.
Yep.
But if I recall correctly from town meeting, when they were selling us this fire truck, which is needed, there was things that were coming off, like this year and next year too, like the big items that.
Well, we were able to get a grant for a bunch of radios, so that we're not having to expend money for that. But the fire truck is a lease to own, so that's another, we typically put $50,000 a year in the capital reserve account, and that would pay for the lease. So it wouldn't be an increase in the tax rate, but at the same time, that $50,000 would be used to pay for that truck, and we wouldn't be putting it in the capital reserve account for the next fire truck. So that's one of those things that we look at is, in the short term, the tax rate isn't affected, but we don't know what's gonna happen in the long term.
I think I may have worded it incorrectly when I asked. So like a specific example was the Gold Star bond.
Yep, the Gold Star bond
There was
is
like
paid
other
off.
things that were.
Yep, right now we have right now the town, as it stands with, well, Gold Star didn't come off, it was the municipal buildings improvement.
Okay.
So right now, we have bond payments in the Gold Star and the, let's see, it's the bridge on Morrill Road, which was combined with the command car for the fire department and the cruisers. So we have about $104,000 in payments for those two bonds. But we were able to pay off the bond for the municipal buildings. So that was $140,000 a year that we weren't having to pay, that we're not going to pay this year.
When does the fire truck grant close?
Well, the grant application period is closed. Last year, they awarded up until December.
Yeah, which the expectation is probably the same this year, Alex.
Okay.
They're a little nebulous, being the federal government, so our expectation is the end of December, this round will probably close.
Okay.
And we've literally, unless you've heard something in the last couple of days, we've just heard nothing.
Yeah.
So,
So what you're saying, though, for the backhoe and the grader, as warrant articles, those would affect the tax rate?
The backhoe would, it's a lease to own, and we have a small amount in our capital reserve account, but not enough to pay for the lease. The grader, we will have about close to $400,000 in the capital reserve account. So we may have to borrow $15,000 or $20,000 or something like that. Depends on what they give us for the old grader. which right now doesn't look like very much. Up until last week, it was a boat anchor. So,
Okay.
yeah, it wasn't going anywhere.
We are just tonight getting our first look at the budget, so I can say we don't have any collective bargaining agreements as warrant articles in terms of the teacher's contract went through last year. And then the support staff isn't a bargaining unit at this point, so I can tell you that if that's a question you don't have.
How long is that contract good for?
4,
4 years?
which started this year.
Transportation.
Transportation.
That's up.
Okay, yeah.
And is that a separate warrant article? Or that's tied into the budget? Yeah.
It's tied right in the budget. So right now, we're currently in negotiations with First Student, which is our transportation provider. Their initial proposal was a 20.5% increase, which tends to be standard across all of the region, the state, and the nation for First Student. So we're still in negotiations. The budget that the board is going to look at for the first time tonight and until next Thursday when we really start diving into it, has that 20.5% increase. But I'm not anticipating any large warrant articles that we haven't even had a chance to discuss with the board yet at this point.
Yeah, great.
We're just focusing on the operational budget at this time.
Yeah, we wouldn't know about this, but our equipment seems to be breaking down, so we decided we were gonna get ahead of the curve a little bit.
So I have a question about the plan for tomorrow. I was able to attend the last half of the last public hearing, and I was surprised that they were not considering the schools as they're looking towards development and bringing in younger families. We've had pretty decent numbers at CES for kindergarten and first grade the past couple years, and the pre-K soccer team for the rec committee was a record-breaking 38 children this year.
Wow.
Which means that there's going to be another big class coming up and potentially one after that. So I know that that's being done by the planning board, but what are they trying to target? Who are they trying to target with development? Is it younger families, or, I think that's where I get confused, because I feel like we're trying to bring in younger families, but not considering the impact to the schools. I struggle.
Well, I'm going to address the 600-pound gorilla that's in the room tonight, and that's that vote the other night that we want to dissolve the union. And I don't see how you plan ahead for something like that. It's just going to totally screw this whole thing that we've got going here. And I was asked to stay away from it, and I did, but I don't feel any different. I started my first grade right over in that corner. And I was in 1971 class of Tilton, graduating, when this was being formed. And I can't believe I don't know what to call it. I don't want to insult anybody here, but it looks very selfish to me on some people's parts to ask this union to dissolve. And that's my bottom line. And I'm supposed to be down at the planning board meeting tonight talking about these things. And yet I'm feeling like I got to defend the school system from whatever the hell crazy is going on here.
So I do agree that impact on development and stuff, if the town were to withdraw, it would be, but if they were to stay and we still bring in, it's still the same situation for CES.
It's not for us planning. What are we planning for? The district to break up and run off and go some other direction? I don't mean how you begin that.
Well, either way, I think the question is, we still are seeing an influx of families into Canterbury, which would ultimately raise costs potentially if we have enough room in those things, is what you're
Correct.
getting at?
I mean, and-
Whether it stays or goes, it's still, if you increase enrollment,
The K-6 is still impacted either way.
yes.
Right, and I think, Randy, to maybe more directly answer your question, what the plan for tomorrow was supposed to be is kind of an all-encompassing document looking at the next 10 years. It's been very interesting in my time on the planning board to go back and look at the last couple of planning documents, and they're incredibly inaccurate. So I'm not sure ours will be much better, but that's certainly the goal. And just speaking for me, I think you and I have had this conversation before. We want young families in this town. We need young families in this town. So I think that you know, addressing specifically the plan for tomorrow, that's his intent, is supposed to be for a vision of town residents, which is why they keep inviting the public participation, which, by the way, has been much better. So it's been nice to see.
Thank you for answering.
Other questions? Do you have questions for us in terms of? I know we asked, talking budget, but anything else?
So from me, what's the enrollment currently at CES? It's just over 100-ish?
Around 100, I want to say 111 at this point.
Yeah. What was the all-time high?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, just curious.
You're talking about
More than anything
a
else.
full life duration
Yeah,
of Canterbury
yeah.
Elementary School. I
Yeah.
don't know that.
So the plan for the planning board is to discuss trying to find a way so that we can grow the town, because we are, and not have every single scrap of frontage covered with a house. And so what we've been trying to do is figure out a way to encourage people to move to Canterbury, because I don't think anybody's against the growth. But we are against the haphazard growth that we've been experiencing. And so the board is very interested in figuring out how to create, and you're not gonna like this maybe, but cluster type of housing where we bring in 4 or 5 houses onto a piece of land that has previously supported one. And that's what we're working on tonight and for the few nights we got left. So that's what we're working on.
So that is a great example. I know as people have talked about cluster housing, and I've been to a couple of different things on it, they haven't said anything about the number of houses you would put. So when people talk about cluster housing, they assume you're talking about like a Sherwood Forest or, you know, a Cambridge Drive.
So Sherwood Forest, despite what the misinformation is that's floating around, is not a cluster. It was somebody coming into town and putting houses unplanned for, hilly-nilly, all around those ponds, and now those folks are paying the price for that. They don't have adequate roads, the sewage systems on those properties are inadequate, and nobody's thought what to do with it. They can't come to the town because they didn't start with us. So we're not gonna assume that, because we can't even begin to pay the costs that are due out there. And I get questions from those folks as to, well, we created a cluster out here, and look what it did for us. Well, that's not what happened there, right? And we do have some clusters in town. They don't look anything like that. So the misinformation is just incredible to me. I spent part of the weekend talking to somebody up there about this very thing. She's not happy. I don't blame her. But Canterbury can't solve that issue. And we all live on our little 5, 10-acre pieces of land out here, and it's really nice, but that's not where we're gonna end up in the end, I don't believe. So I would like to be part of that discussion tonight, so whenever we get done here, that's where I'm headed.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come see us.
Any other questions? Yeah, so like I said, tonight's our first look, as Michael said, at the budget, so I don't think we even knew the 20% for transportation, so we haven't had a chance to kind of work through any of that. I can say this board in the past has been very thoughtful about the budget, recognizing the demands of the two towns. What I mean by that is keeping in mind the tax rates and the impact our budget and town budgets have on people's cost of living. So I would expect those discussions to continue if history serves to be the guide.
It dawned on me as you're asking about the budget and what are our plans, and I'm like, well, we just got the binders like minutes ago. We really should have this meeting with both the Belmont folks and the Canterbury folks, and November, December, like, it's hard to get a perfect timing, like, time of year to do this, but we should have had an opportunity to talk about budget things, and we've kind of missed that opportunity, because we don't have really any information for you yet. And we've already met with the Belmont folks. you
So
know.
Sean, are you saying that, you know, BOA or Canterbury Selectmen and Belmont Selectmen at the same?
Yeah, yeah, even that would be fine.
I will say, as we think about the plan, I keep wanting to now call it plan for the future, the plan for tomorrow, and I may say this next month when you see me at the hearing, but I think that the infrastructure of the school and the infrastructure of the town as a young family go hand in hand. So as we're thinking about development of how, which I live in Sherwood Forest, so I'll just say that up front, and I actually have no issues. I'm happy for the most part on my half-an-acre lot. But I will say, looking back, the infrastructure of the town, it wasn't until I got into the school and I was running the soccer program out of my checking account because there's no infrastructure in the town. So I think we really, for families and rec, it's, now, my youngest is 17, so it's been a long time, but I still think we have to balance the, if we grow too fast and don't have the infrastructure, families aren't gonna wanna come here either, because there aren't the rec programs and the opportunities for before and after school care and things like that to actually support. So, and I think that goes hand in hand with the school, is what I'm saying. I don't think it's mutually exclusive, because otherwise you're missing, I mean, the school has always been a focal point in my life here in Canterbury at the elementary school. So that's all, I'm just saying we have to think about that. Yes, budgets, and yes, I know there's all this stuff going on in the background related to the recommendation to the state to consider withdrawal, or however the wording is, but ultimately, Canterbury Elementary School is not going away. So we have to think about what's our infrastructure look like here to support Shaker students in Canterbury. So that, I don't know how that factors in for the plan for tomorrow, but I think it's important for us to think about.
One quick comment, we have made some strides. I know Randy.
Oh, yeah, we have.
With the recreation and
Yes.
everything. We did have a recreation committee 20 years ago, and it, I don't know, I guess, lost people to help out, and it did have a budget at one time. And then it went dormant for quite a while. When my kids were young, there was a recreation committee. My kids played soccer and t-ball and everything, and you guys have done a great job getting it back together and getting it up and going again. I think that, at least from a budgeting standpoint, the town, I spent 2 terms as a selectman, and then now I'm the town administrator. I think we've had a history of being very open and working with anybody that wants to have recreation.
So Michelle, you may not be aware, but it was 2 years ago, the town started fully funding the rec committee, so they pay for soccer as well as town Halloween.
Yeah, no, and I'm looking historically back, and I know Halloween and soccer, but it's still one of those things, like somebody was posting even today, like, is there anything for kindergarten students related to basketball, and is there related to, so sometimes it's just the little things that you don't know about. So I'm not saying Canterbury's not supporting. What I'm saying is everything goes hand in hand. So as you bring in more young families, we have to think about what is the infrastructure. And at the time, which none of you were there, we were not successful getting soccer back into the program. So me and another woman were the ones running it. So I think sometimes it depends on the leadership and what structure is in place, and I think it's pretty solid right now. So I'm happy about that. So thank you for that. So, Okay.
I just have one correction for the minutes, Greta. I said 111 students at CS. As of October 1st, it was 106.
106, okay. Do you know, Michael, in the last few years, what has it been, around 120?
I don't have that.
Okay. 106 though, current?
Yeah, we've seen very minimal fluctuations in that enrollment number, but we are seeing somewhat of an increase, if you will, in the lower grades in Canterbury.
All right. Thank you, and I appreciate it. I know you have planning board, the hearing tonight, so I appreciate you coming.
Can I just say one thing? When I grew up here in town, we moved here in 1957, so I probably predate everybody in this room. My parents, along with the other parents, I had 4 brothers, so there was plenty of us running around, and everybody else in town had 4 or 5 of them. And yet they managed to put together a ski tow on the back hill that we skied on for 10 years, 12 years, I don't know. We had the best ski team in the area because my brothers and the other kids skied at the age of 4, 5, 6. It was something that you didn't say, well, we need the town to set this up. We did it, right? We put on a fair every year. Everybody showed up, put the fair on, went home, cleaned up and went home. And I think that the generation coming along thinks that these things are owed to them, when I would suggest that you organize, you come to the town, see what resources we might have, and then pull it off. That's just my opinion, watching it from a distance. I'm only 1 year on the board left. You can vote me off next year. Wouldn't hurt my feelings too much.
Are you gonna start that ski tow back up?
Yeah, that was my question.
That was an insurance decision,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Town's got insurance?
Yeah.
Not for that, they didn't. That was a private insured thing, and so it cost you $15 to belong as a family, no matter how many kids you had or when you used it.
That was a lot back then, I feel like.
Yeah.
It was more than today, yeah. But I don't know. I'm discouraged with the direction we're heading. I don't know what to do about it at this point. I can't watch this catastrophe go down like it looks like it's going to me, but maybe I don't have any choice. I don't have any kids in the system. Both my daughters graduated from Belmont, very happy with the situation. They got the education they needed to go to Bowdoin and UNH. Those were their first choices, and they got in. So I think the education is adequate. I think the school system provides a lot of opportunities for soccers and basketballs, and it may not have every single thing that someone's looking for, but it's got most of them. And if we're not happy with it, the school board seems to me the place to come and solve that issue, not to take it out on the town, because we split this union up. I don't know what people think is going to happen to these kids. I don't know how many we got. I was asked to stay away, and I have, but now I'm seeing the perils of having done that. And you're going to hear me now, probably.
Well, I'll tell you the same thing I've been telling everyone else. There's, a side that's for and a side against, and both of them are working on their arguments now. Once that's ready, they'll be submitting it as required by law for November 1st, and then it's going to be posted publicly for everyone to read.
Randy, as long as we're sort of starting down that road anyway. So as I understand it, the next step is the state gets those reports, the majority report, minority report, and renders a decision at some point, correct?
That is my understanding as well.
Okay. And then after that, both towns will, well, my understanding is Canterbury gets to vote twice.
If the state board stamps its seal of approval.
Exactly, right. So if the state board says no, then it's a dead issue, correct?
I believe so.
That, at least that's my understanding. If
Not many
there's-
people get this far,
Right,
so.
that's, yeah. So assuming they say yes, then Canterbury gets to vote twice at the school board and at town meeting, correct? Yeah, and then Belmont has a vote as well.
Correct.
So
So
there's
the
a-
district votes as a whole, and then
Right.
the town of Canterbury votes separately.
Right, right. So there's a lot between where we are now
Yes.
and
Yes,
next year, let's say.
correct.
we holding another one of these once we get our budgets together? Is that the idea, or?
Do you want to come back?
Oh, I do.
If you are interested in coming back, we're happy to, once we.
I thought that's what was being suggested here. I don't know how you can have this discussion without having the numbers.
I think Sean was talking about as we plan for this in the future to move
Right.
that
But I'm
later.
fine with
but
doing it in
I'm
a
happy
month,
to.
yeah. I mean, we have to find the sweet spot as far as like, I'd hate to meet with you and talk about the budget and then have you go, wow, it's really high, is there anything you can do about it? And we go, oh, we already made our decision, we've already moved forward. Like,
Right, I mean.
we have to find that spot in the middle where, you know,
Right.
we definitely want to hear the feedback and we can take that feedback back and make some decisions.
Yeah, I would also like to have another meeting. I think, you know, speaking for Canterbury, we're looking at about a 15% increase in our healthcare costs. I gotta believe you're all looking at a similar increase in your costs, so it would be nice to sit down with some harder numbers, or just hard numbers, I suppose, since we don't have any at this point.
Do we have opportunity to send board representatives to the selectmen's meeting? Like, do they always have to come to us, or can we send people to them?
We can.
It's always an open,
Yeah, I mean, Michael's
open
been to.
invitation, yeah.
Yeah, and certainly our meetings are open as well. We could easily fit someone on the agenda, so.
Yeah, so we could do it that way.
Our next meeting with our town budget committee is the first meeting in December. And our department heads have submitted a proposed budget to the selectmen. They'll see it in a couple weeks. And then there'll be discussion amongst the selectmen, and then it'll get sent out to we'll have discussions with the department heads individually, and then it'll go to the budget committee for discussion after that. So, and that's the 1st of December, the first Monday in December.
First month.
And as far as like our timeline goes, I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. I mean, we typically have the public hearings in January, relatively early January, I think. So by mid-December, we're already like made our decision as far as what we think we're gonna move forward with.
Yeah.
So I think we'd have to have that discussion
Yeah.
November sometime.
Yep.
Do you know the date of your town meeting?
I don't know yet. I haven't even looked that far. I have to look at the calendar.
Second Saturday in March?
It's on a Friday night.
It's on St. Patrick's Day last year.
Yes, it was.
The second Friday would be the 8th.
Okay.
Okay, well, we can definitely look at that as
Yeah.
we're planning things out and can look at coming to you or vice versa, having you back. It's not a problem at all.
I'll keep in touch with Mike
Yeah.
and we'll try and figure out a
Absolutely.
schedule.
Yeah,
All right.
I think that's a good idea.
All right,
Good.
thank you.
Been a pleasure.
You guys could always join us on the budget advisory.
That's true.
Always looking for help.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, next up. I'm gonna invite our budget.
Yeah. Budget.
Jay, Heidi, and I should remember your name.
Andrew.
Andrew, come on up. So, welcome before you. I don't know, do you know everybody? How about we do, like, I didn't remember Andrew's name. So I just want to make sure we all know each other at the table because we'll be doing a lot of work together here over the next couple of months. I know Heidi and Jay. Do you want to?
Sure, Heidi Cheney from Canterbury.
Jay Graffin from Belmont.
Andrew Fournier from Canterbury.
Excellent.
Kate McDonald, Canterbury.
Sean Embry.
Where are you going, Sean?
Sean, where do you live?
Where do I live? I live in Belmont. But I represent the full Shaker Regional
Yeah.
School District.
Jill Smith, Belmont. Alice Todd, Canterbury.
Mark Hickford, Belmont.
Raina Johnson, Canterbury.
Michelle Lewis, Canterbury.
Jeff Roberts, Belmont.
Tercey, Superintendent.
Debbie Thompson, Business Administrator.
And Francis Alonso, school board secretary.
So you all have your board binders. This is our first look at the budget, so for those of you who are new to the board and to the budget committee, Michael and or Debbie, depending on who's doing, will walk us through kind of what's in this binder, as well as next steps. Please bring your binder to every meeting, because it will get, I was gonna say fuller, that's probably not right English, but anyway, we will continue to add items to this as it develops and we deliberate and ask Michael for things and things like that. So tonight is information, so we can ask questions, but we're not gonna do deliberation on the budget itself tonight. So just orienting people to that. Michael.
Thank you. So just for those that aren't familiar with this process, Debbie and I would be more than happy to meet with anyone on an individual basis, or a few of you to go over how the budget is made up, and basically the budget development process for those of you that are new to it, because it is fairly complex. We'd be happy to do that. Just reach out to myself or to Debbie, and we'll schedule a time to come in and have that sit down and go over that with those of you that feel that you would like that to happen. So every year we put together what's basically called the budget binder. And there are specific categories that the binder is made up of, and each of the sleeves have different tabs that have different titles. The purpose of the binder is, as we go through the budget development process, we add information to this, particularly if the advisory budget committee requests additional information, or any board member requests additional information that helps make informed decisions when it comes to the budget development process. We add it in basically in the category that it's applicable to. So the binders tend to be very helpful, so you can organize the information. What you have in front of you, which I'll go through, is the first page is the budget development calendar. And this is important, particularly to put these dates in your calendar, so that you have them and you know when we're going to be meeting, because it's a busy time and we spend a lot of time together between now and January, quite honestly, going over the budget. Some of these meetings we might add put additional meetings on if necessary, but this is really the calendar that's laid out. So that's the first page. The second section is what's known as the budget summary. This summarizes the entire budget, but what Debbie and I wanted to do is just really hit the highlights for you tonight. We really start digging into this next Thursday, when we have the administrative team here to answer specific questions about their budgets in general that they put forward that are in this proposed operating budget. And just so people are aware, the process that we go through is teachers put in their requests for specific items they might want to see in the budget for 24, 25. It's difficult because it's a year in advance that they're putting these requests in. The principals compile all that information, as well as any other administrator, and put that forward as a school building proposed budget or a department proposed budget. And then Debbie and I put all of that together to develop our overall proposed operating budget. So some of the highlights that we have here, go ahead.
Just a question, could we attend next Thursday, or is that?
That would be great, absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
if we can.
Is it here?
It's gonna be at BES, 6 o'clock. at BES. We had to change the October 17th meeting that was on here to November 2nd.
So that's the November 2nd.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. So the proposed budget that you're gonna have an opportunity to look through between now and next Thursday, the overall increase is $1.6 million, $1,651,120. That's a 6.01% increase over this current school year's budget. And that's the subtotal of the operational budget. That is the number that's the total operational budget. That's not the percentage that actually impacts the tax rate. The number that impacts the tax rate is what's known as the subtotal operational budget, and that is what impacts the tax rate, and that's an increase of $1,821,120, and that's a 7.1% increase.
Why are those different?
So your total operational budget includes any of the offsets, such as our federal grant monies, because we have to gross budget, which includes your federal grant monies as well as food service.
And the transfers to expendable trust funds that were approved last year that were funded from the fund balance.
So that's considered your total budget. However, when we go to set the tax rate is based on your operational budget number. So the proposed budget, and we tried to do this little summary sheet for you here, and I'll just go through it, includes salary increases of $790,471. There are new personnel requests in there totaling $361,452, and there are other increases of $519,935. We did provide you a sort of a budget impact summary on the next sheet. Our health insurance is in here at 10%. That was based on what our health insurance provider, School Care, gave us as a recommendation to start the budget development process. However, we should receive our official rates by November 15th. And so we developed this budget based on what they gave us originally. We're hoping that it comes in lower. There are no SREA separation requests for 24-25, so you won't see that in the budget. And we can't really estimate the revenues and tax rate projections at this time.
Does this factor in the increase for the transportation?
Our budget does, so I'll get to that. So if you flip
So,
the page.
can I ask one question?
Yep.
I know we're not getting into the details, but when you talk about budget, salary increases in the budget, are you including, so is this SREA, but also those that are not in the union? Like,
Yes.
This is total increases.
Absolutely, Sean. So if you flip to the next page, unless there's other questions on that, that's just really an overall big picture of the budget. So the next page, included in the proposed budget, the SREA, what's a contractual obligation, you have year 2 of the collective bargaining agreement in there. That reflects $394,423. So if you recall, last year, the collective bargaining agreement had the costs associated with it as a separate warrant article. Those salary increases were not part of the proposed operating budget. In year 2 of a collective bargaining agreement, those salary increases go into the budget. So it shows, it comes across as an increase, even though the voters had already approved it as a separate warrant article the year before. So that's a contractual obligation. So there are a couple things that we added in here, particularly for support staff and these are categories that our employees are under. Support staff, we have a school to work coordinator at BHS. The request is to move that to a 5-day-a-week, 5.5 hours a day position. So that's additional days. You can see the costs associated with that. There's a request to move our secretary position here at Canterbury Elementary School to 255 days to reflect what all the other year-round secretaries are in the district. So you can see the costs associated with that. Our support staff that fall on the salary scale that has been established for our support staff, we put a 4% increase to the salary schedule itself. So this reflects the $184,184 reflects a 4% increase to the salary scale, as well as the steps that are in that salary scale. Administrators are in at a 4% increase. Specialists are in at a 4% increase. Non-affiliated support staff, those are support staff that do not fall on the salary scale for support staff. These are SAU support staff as well as speech assistants. And I think that's it, right, Debbie, for non-affiliated?
There is one other position for special ed in charge of the transition.
Transition coordinator,
Yep.
correct. So they're in at a 5% increase, and that's because they don't see a step. They're not on a salary scale to see the step as well as the 4%. And then there are market adjustments. The director of IT position, we moved from 93,000 to 100,000, and that's specifically because we offered the position to candidates to fill the vacancy that we currently have, and the salary was an obstacle, a deterrent to them taking the position because they're accepting positions at $110,000 to $120,000 more. I mean, $120,000. So I moved that to $100,000, and then we have some, our speech pathologists that we did a market adjustment for to keep up with the current rate for the service that they provide. So as for salary increases, overall, what's in the proposed budget are the $790,471. Now we also have in there new personnel, support staff. We have 4 one-on-one behavioral assistants that we actually are employing this year. That are not in the current budget, so those are next year's proposed budget.
Those behavioral assistants are, lack of a better term, required based on?
IEP, student IEPs, yes. And it's actually 6, however, there are two vacancies at this point that we're not filling. So it's 4 positions in the budget. In the proposed budget. And those
come as a result of IEPs?
Yes.
Students who,
Yep.
No, I understand.
no, I didn't know if Andrew knew, so students with IEP,
Yeah.
individualized education
My
programs.
sister's a special ed teacher.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And I know the question might come up, that reflects new students to our district. The 6 that we put in the budget this year, are 5 are new, 1 is not. Let's see, and then if you recall, we added a teacher to Canterbury Elementary School because of our large class sizes in kindergarten and 1st grade this year. We've absorbed that position in our budget this year through savings for vacant positions that we haven't been able to fill. However, we have to put it in the budget for next year if we're going to continue with that additional position. You'll see also we're bringing back the contracted service, the athletic trainer. We actually have been able to fill the athletic trainer position this year. We're working within the $10,000 that we put in this year for the Belmont, to have a Belmont EMT attend. However, we have a certified athletic trainer that's attending right now, and we're looking to move that to basically a full-time athletic trainer. That's in at $20,000. You were aware that Erin Chubb, the principal at CES, requested a math tutor. She actually requested full-time. We put it in as part-time as well.
So on that math and STEM, not to discuss tonight, but I'm just wondering what the opinion is at the high school level. You know, I had a little bit of interaction with some students there. And so I'm wondering, I know last year we had a big discussion about pay rates and the union scales, and that was kind of getting in the way of being able to hire STEM teachers. So I'll be interested if maybe there's some other way to deal with that. If tutors is a way to do it. And, you know, if, I forget the principal's name, but if he feels it's needed.
Mr. Finch.
Yeah.
So we're fortunate this year we're able to fill all of those math vacancies.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so we're fully staffed at the high school.
With people who can teach it.
Mhm.
Okay. I have to
Yes.
say that because I think one teacher I would.
Yes. Good question.
Okay.
Good question. And then we did put in here, what we considered a specialist is a BCBA to work with some of our students with behavioral needs. Now, we currently contract that service. So we took the monies out of contracted services to hire our own BCBA, which is actually a savings, but it's called, comes across as a new position.
What does BCBA stand for?
Behavioral cert,
I was gonna look it up. 'cause
Behavioral certified. I don't know, I thought I had.
Behavioral certified behavioral.
Behavior analyst certification.
Yeah.
Board certified behavior
Yes,
analyst.
There it is.
board
Thank
certified
you.
behavior.
So the contracted service for that currently is more than $134,000?
Yes.
Yes. I'm certain of that.
Yes, it is. So we were able to reduce our contracted services and the other evals line to take on our own position.
Is that just the salary or does that include the benefits?
That's salary and benefits.
Okay.
Correct, Debbie?
Yes, salary and fixed cost. Yeah, and well, that one benefits.
So does that position function for all the schools or some grade level?
It's specific, I believe, to the middle and the elementary school.
Is that driven by IEPs as well or special ed?
Yes.
You said middle and elementary school, not schools? Does it cover both elementary schools?
I'm not necessarily sure what the plan is. It'd be a good question for Tanya on next Thursday. And then you'll see the other increases, the health insurance, we put in at a 10% increase. There's no premium holiday, that's $327,098. Transportation, which we talked about earlier, is coming in at 20.5%, that's $162,610. We had to increase the homeless transportation cost by $20,000. And then next year, high schools will be going through the accreditation review process with NEASC, and those are stipends associated with the work for those that are going to be involved. So those are really items that we wanted to pinpoint for you. Once you start looking at the budget, you'll see other requests in there and other increases and so forth. All of that totals $1.6 million. Okay. So then the next section, this is the summary sheets of all the different functions within the budget. And then the next section is the budget detail. This is where you really get into the detail of the budget by line item. And there are notes associated with that. You'll see, like, if you flip it over this one page, what we did is we tried to add notes to some of those increases. So you have that information going into your review. And then the next section, it's known as the rationale sheets. These are the specific principal and other administrator department requests. So this breaks it down, and this is what you would want to look at specifically for next Thursday's meeting with the administrators, because each administrator that put together a budget, their rationale sheet is in here. And if you look down in the lower right corner, it'll tell you the school and or the department that those budgets reflect.
So Michael, on the personnel costs, and I don't know what the details are in the contracts, but I assume that there's probably compensation for overtime or somebody has to slide in and cover somebody else, how it works. And what metrics are looked at to understand what might be driving those costs and where maybe they could be managed better, or maybe there's where this can be, I don't know.
So we look specifically, I mean, when we talk about coverage, we look at our substitute line specifically. And you can see where the budgets are. If you look at the FY23 actual line of your budget, that shows you like what we spent in
So is the
22,
substitute
23.
budget the only variable budget for the labor costs? The teachers are on a salary regardless of what hours they work?
Correct.
Okay.
Support staff, however, if they are required to work beyond their contractual hours, that's considered overtime.
Yeah, okay.
And that's within the actual salary line itself. We don't have an overtime line.
So can we get some kind of sense if that looks like reasonable? I would assume it does, because you guys are usually on top of stuff, but I don't mean to imply you're not. But I don't know if that's a big number or a little number.
for,
Wherever there's a, I'm gonna call it a variable labor cost. You've got built-in salaries, you've got, you know, if you're hiring hourly employees and they're promised 8 hours a day, they are what they are. Then the question becomes, okay, additional costs, overtime, or what other compensation fits in? Maybe it's a very small number and we don't need to spend any time with it, maybe it's not.
do we have that?
I don't know if we have.
So I wouldn't have the number, but I can tell you the biggest variable obviously is gonna be substitutes. You know, as Michael was saying, if you look on the detail on page 1 of 35, last year, we spent $163,985 on substitutes. That's not what we budgeted. You know, we carried $100,000 in this year's budget. But because so many people were out, and we do have the sidebar agreement where teachers who give up their planning period get additional money, you know, we did go over, and it's still getting very difficult to get subs. As far as overtime for support staff, it's not typical to have overtime for support staff. What ends up being the variable is if a new student moves in and we have to hire another one-to-one behavioral assistant.
Well, again,
That's gonna be a
If
variable.
that's a small number,
It is a very small
I
number,
don't
yeah.
want to talk about it. If the substitute is kind of a problem area, maybe we come back and discuss it.
Yeah.
I realize as we get into this, we're going to hit on some of the bigger cost areas, and that's
Yeah.
where we're going to spend our time. But
Is the amount related to the sidebar?
It's a combination, no. I mean, we also use support staff, and they get a differential if they end up covering as a
Like, is that
substitute.
something you can get data on?
Not anything that's, I can't really predict what we're gonna pay, because I don't know what we're gonna have for subs. I mean, if we get a regular sub, that's $100 a day. If we have to use a teacher or have to use a support staff member, it ends up being more.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I ask is that would be good information to have, because in theory, if we're paying for, you know, these sidebar additional amounts for teachers to give up their planning time and some other things here and there, but we could increase our personnel by a, I don't know, 50-cent raise or whatever, you could justify the increase in the wages because in theory, we would be paying less in other areas. Again, that'd be hard to,
But you could pull, I guess it would be this year, and we're not that far into this year. But what we've spent on that, those overages, right?
Yeah.
yeah, I was kind of coming at it in two ways. Dollars is a way to kind of see if you need to poke a little more, but then if you look beneath that, at the dollars, and it turns out hours, and you start really thinking about it, if it's a number that's larger than feels comfortable, I would say, then start poking at why is it happening?
Yeah.
And then to your point, if we can understand that, I mean, where I'm coming at, bringing a substitute into the classroom, my experience with my children is it's a pretty non-productive day to go to school. So if it's happening like in certain pockets pretty regularly, then the flip side is, you know, how good is the education kids are getting, or how consistent is particularly younger children? And I don't know if that's tracked or not, to know if there's certain areas that maybe we need to dig, as the board or the teachers or the principals need to dig a little deeper to understand that. Does that make sense?
And just want to note, because we referred to compensation for a teacher to cover another teacher's class during their prep period, that's not a sidebar anymore, that's written directly into the collective bargaining agreement. Your next section, we wanted to make sure that so again, going back, the rationale sheets, those are going to be very important for the meeting with administrators next Thursday, because your questions would probably be generated out of those rationale sheets for the administrators.
And the notes from the rationale sheet are the same as the detail notes.
Your next section, I just want to give you the balances of our trust funds as of July 1st, 2023, so you know aware of that. And then the next section is our capital improvement plans. We have two of them, one for building and grounds and one for technology, to give you an idea. Because there are items in the proposed operating budget that are part of these capital improvement plans. And then the next sections, the revenue and apportionment, we'll fill that in once we have them. Health, dental, and retirement, we'll fill that in once we have it. Again, we anticipate we'll get our health insurance rates by November 15th. There's a section called staffing. This is usually, we start filling this up when we get some requests for some items that pertain specifically to our staffing. However, we did include the rationale for the CES secretary as well as the CES math tutor that Aaron Chubb put together, as well as the rationale for the school to career coordinator position that Mr. Finch put together.
I don't remember last year, maybe we had it and I just didn't understand it, but did we ever get for each of the grades the student-to-teacher ratios? Can we get that? I'm gonna take the positives, maybe it's too large, but I don't know, you know?
Yep. Could be that. And we have a section that's other, they're just filled out within miscellaneous, and then once we put together the default budget, we'll go in this section. So that's your binder.
I have something I want to bring up now and get ahead of this.
All right.
So last year, we had an incident with the robotics grant. Can we start looking into that now to see when that's going to open up so we don't run into the same scenario we had last year?
So we've already received the robotics grant for this year, and it's a 2-year grant. So we will also get it next year, as long as they do their end-of-year summary by the end of May.
Perfect.
And I will be on top of that.
And we level funded the monies that were in that were put in the operating budget during the deliberative session last year. So that's level funded through here.
And then my second thing I want to bring up is just to remind everyone that we discussed divvying up the speaking sections at the beginning, so as we dig into this, people can really drill down into what they're responsible for.
I think the only I agree with that, because I remember discussing it. The hard part is that our budget's it's not formed, it looks different, so I would need a translation. So the public hearing booklet looks different than this budget. So I don't know what I'm digging into.
So if you look at the budget summary section, that is the basis for the public hearing book.
What page are you?
So I'm in the budget summary section, green,
Okay.
behind. So those are the summaries that I use to put into the public hearing book.
Okay.
And then add the descriptions.
So like I would think it would be a good idea to give Alice what I had last year, and then I would take Marcel's, because it's her first year, no offense, Mark. And that might be, it was a good first year one to have.
Okay.
So you want me to report who did what, and just have that in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
What am I being saved for?
The easier part.
Yeah, I think we'll know next week.
So picking up on Randy's comment,
felt it needed to be asked.
The budget.
how do I say this delicately?
Just say it, Jay.
It seemed like for the couple of deliberative sessions I've attended over the years, there's a couple people that come really prepared to speak their piece. And they tend to be people involved with the school system. I'm not meaning teachers or whatever, maybe they are, but. And then the rest of the audience is like, I don't know. So where I'm going with this is thinking about some of the response and take this as positive feedback. But if we know where there's some of these hot button issues and we've worked this hard on the budget, can we identify those and then really come prepared to have an engagement at the deliberative session as opposed to taking the information coming at us? I mean, it wasn't just the robotics team, it was some other group that came in there and threw a bunch of statistics, but ultimately didn't press getting their vote in. As you know, I was kind of a little bit amazed that we spent all this work trying to trim it back, and ultimately what the voters got presented was a default budget that was even higher and an operating budget that was higher than what this group said. And the mass voters, when it came time to vote for the budget, really never had input. And I understand that's the way New Hampshire's set up, so I've had to absorb that. But if we know that ahead of time, that there's likely to be some areas that are going to be sensitive issues, maybe come a little more prepared with some facts, because I think once people in the general audience hear it, at least they can say, okay, now I've heard a little.
So I feel like we did that last year with the increase to certain
Well, I
salaries.
really got nervous was after the thing got going with the robotics budget, which was small money, but I was really nervous somebody's gonna talk about those positions that we decided not to, or the board decided not to refill. I mean, that would have been a, you know, a little bit of a game changer on the budget.
Well, someone did ask a question, so we were able to explain why we cut the position, and nobody asked to put him back in.
Right.
But you're right, if they had,
And I would expect if we have any discussions about positions, additional, but definitely if we lose any, that immediately is something we need to be prepared to discuss, because one position could easily be a hot topic that people will bring up for.
Yeah, I mentioned the positions, but there could be others. I
There-
mean, I
yeah,
realize there's a
absolutely.
lot of interest in the sports program, for example, and I get it. I mean, I support it, but I'm just throwing that out. If you know there's gonna be a sensitive
Yeah.
area, maybe we should, or the board should identify that and be a little more prepared to talk about it. Not that you did a bad job last time.
no, I totally get it. So a couple of things about, so what we have asked Michael to do and what he's charged with doing is to bring us a budget based on the needs of the students in the district, which is what we have typically asked him to do. It is then our job, and I'm saying this because when I first started on the board, sometimes budget discussions, everybody would look at each other. So we need to discuss and figure out questions we have, like as we go through, not tonight. So it's our job as the board to really dive into this budget if we want more information, if we want any type of prioritization or question. I'm just saying as we go through, we have to discuss that. So if you, like I said, next week we have a meeting with the administrators. As we know, the administrators, it doesn't include the personnel. So you're looking at straight administrator costs, like to run the school, correct?
Mhm.
So that is a very small percentage of our budget. So 80%, correct, give or take a percentage or two, 79, 81, depending on the year, is personnel costs. So just be aware when you're looking at increases, or, you know, cutting $1,000 here and there isn't gonna have lots of impact, just saying. So that's what Michael's done, is he's brought us a budget to meet the needs of the students in the school district. And now it's our job to ask questions, dive in, those types of things.
And I, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
And I just want to reiterate the process, just so people are aware that the principals and administrators that lead a specific department put together their budget. They provide that budget to me. I meet with them individually and go through each line of their budgets. I either cut those lines by a certain amount or I add to them. I look at what we've spent the year prior. I look at the specific needs and their rationale as to why they're putting those in there, and then we put together the full budget, which includes all of the staffing and so forth. So I do meet with each administrator individually, go through their budgets, settle on what I would like to bring forward as a proposed budget. This year, you'll see items in the administrator's budgets that will stand out. There are things that they have asked for potentially in the past that didn't make it through the budget development process, specifically me, that are now in the budget, because I knew that there were other areas that we needed to focus on. So, and there are other areas that we've cut in the past, I should say the board has, once it made it to this level. So it'll be very clear some of the bigger items that are coming through administrative requests, compared to the $100 here, $250 there, and so forth.
Well, just to put into perspective what you're talking about, I mean, that, you know, that approximate, 80%. So was it last year, was it 27 million? Was the operating budget approximately?
Yes.
So, on a $27 million budget, with 20% discretionary spending, that's 5.4 million. So there's approximately 5.4 million of monies that can be debated.
But I can also think, by the way, Sean's idea about getting Belmont in here and the selectmen is, they'll understand early on, and I don't know what kind of influence the selectmen and administrators have over what goes into the budget process for the town, but I will tell you, for Belmont, there were a couple of things that showed up. I don't know, as a taxpayer, like, I get it, but if you're gonna raise my taxes, in some cases, I'd rather put it on the school. On the other hand, the school's struggling over here, and the town's doing things on some of the stuff I don't think's necessary. But I think the problem is, you know, I was glad to hear these folks be concerned. I'm not sure that coordination happens on the Belmont side. It does, I'm not aware of it.
When was the last demographic study done for the district, the school district, not the town? I'm concerned, like you were saying, you have a number of elementary school kids coming, and it's not just impacting Canterbury, right? They're gonna be moving through, we remain within the district, so it's gonna impact other schools as well.
Just did one.
Yeah, we did that part of the feasibility study, I believe it was in 2018.
Okay.
And then Mark, my comment on your 5 million was that, don't forget, $1 million of that is roughly transportation costs before increase.
So even less.
So it's even less.
Right.
Debbie, other than like the health insurance, what else do you need for the default budget? Is it just the health insurance?
Just the health insurance.
So when we have that, we can at least put that in the.
And we would like to put that together earlier this year than we have in the past, so the board knows what we're looking at for default.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions from me? Again, if anyone wants to sit down and go through the budget process in general, or the budget binder and the documents that are in there on an individual basis, just reach out to me and we'll schedule something, we'll sit down and have that conversation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll see you next week.
We'll get you a book, Kate.
I'm sure you will. We're on the horizon. Golden Drive. I like had a, like, where is my? Wow. Okay, on the horizon, so when are we doing Silas? Where's SAS? Okay,
14.
and that's where it's gonna be, because that's where principals are
Yes.
too.
And that's the meeting that we want to move.
And that's the meeting we want to move. Do the principals know that?
No. I usually let them know once we decide on a date.
Okay. We need to do that next week, so we have.
When are the retirement requests due?
They were due for the SREA by October 15th. Administrators have until November 1st.
So the notes I took in the last meeting, I think there was supposed to be a report out by administrators about what they want to do to fix competencies?
I'm gonna try try and tackle that sometime in November, probably, I'm thinking the 28th. Just provide the board with the feedback that we have received from the staff, as well as some updates on where we are with that action plan that provided the board a few meetings ago.
I have a question, and you guys already know, what is Cyrus going to specifically talk about when it's related to?
He's going to report specifically on our state assessment results for the district. That's his report.
Okay.
Does he go over SAT as well for the high school?
I don't believe that was included in the
I don't
last
know.
report.
Last year, that would be interesting too.
I don't know, because that's the assessment for the high school, so I don't know if we've ever looked at that. But it's broken down, Kate, by reading and math for the assessment results.
I'm sure we have, but
I don't know, it just made me think.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's the only test that we take at the high school.
Correct.
Just the SAT.
We'll look into it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we'll add that piece to the agenda, the report out on the competencies. I believe, Michael, the teachers, they've been doing the World Cafe.
I'll do that as a part of my report, the superintendent report. It's the first meeting of the month.
I should have something to add for that too. I talked to Mr. Finch about me attending the faculty council meeting to talk to teachers about that so that I can have some of that in my board report as well.
Great.
Perfect.
Yeah, because I asked Kate and Maddie to look at it from a student perspective, how we can solicit feedback from students around competency-based grading and reporting.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Hoping I'll be able to set up a focus group type situation to talk to students about it.
Great. Okay. All right. Okay, seeing nothing else, volunteer list.
Make a motion to accept the volunteer list with no exceptions.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. And then we have permission to travel. She already had permission to plan. And she has planned.
Motion to grant VHS French Club permission to travel to Quebec City.
Second.
Discussion?
Chaperones for 50 students?
2 staff and parents TBD. So they're going to have parents too.
All right, yep, I'm sorry. I didn't continue reading.
Anything else? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. All right, the internal policy is up for action. This is the second reading. We'll take them one by one. DK, payment procedures.
So it's just motion to approve updates to policy DK payment procedures?
I think so, right?
Yeah, you can do individual policies or
It's due in bulk.
do them
Yeah,
in bulk
do it in
if you
bulk.
like.
Perfect. Does anyone have,
I mean, any changes would have happened in the first reading.
correct?
Right.
Okay, so,
Motion to approve policy updates to DK, DKC, DM, EB, and EBBB as
Second.
presented.
any additional discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. All right, There are a few Appendix B in your packet. I think it's the only thing we have.
It is.
Okay, so, we can approve these in public unless there's something of a personnel nature.
Motion to approve Appendix B nominations.
Second.
Thanks, Kate. Okay, any discussion?
Just the, one thing I would add is that it's like 10 positions, if I remember correctly, that have not been filled, that are categorized as winter. So I'm assuming those he's having, or somebody's having trouble filling them. I don't know. But I'm always concerned, especially with the sports ones, because they typically have like a start date when they need to start. If we don't have anybody on board, that's a problem. So, I'm a little concerned about that. I'd like to get them all filled, co-curricular and sports.
Yes. I noticed that too. So if you could check, Michael, with
Yeah.
Cayman, like where we're at with those. Any additional? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Next up, public communication and correspondence. Not just you, I'm. Okay, seeing none? Nothing for non-public?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.